through a significant portion of my career, I've ultimately found that if there is a winning economy or if there is a winning formula, it ultimately boils down to any company comes and invests only in places where talent is available. So the human resources are the most critical thing, and everything else is incidental. Nasscom itself, number of occasions they've been at us saying that each state has a different framework as far as allowing women to work around the clock is concerned, as far as access to some other issues concerned. So now I think with the adoption of the labor codes, all of those issues are out of the way.
India talks about democratizing AI. How do you see it evolving, and what's the journey in your mind?
I think there are 2 or 3 parts to this. I think we do understand that currently there is this concentration of AI infrastructure in the hands of a few companies, whether you're talking about those who make the AI chips or you talk about those who have access to AI models. And I think the market forces themselves are breaking this down. More companies are entering into AI chips, for instance, manufacture. And I think very early in the process, the approach we adopted was that we are not going to necessarily say that we will buy only NVIDIA GPUs. Our AI compute is going to be whoever produces the chips, which is a fundamental way in which government procures. So to that extent, whatever is available, including NVIDIA chips, including anything else that comes up in due course, is something which becomes part of what we do. Second thing is that in the long run, we also need to build our domestic capacity in terms of, the kind of the AI-related accelerators which need to be done and so on. So as part of our own programs, the National Supercomputing Mission, the India Semiconductor Mission and so on, there is work going on, and we see that's a long process, and we'll continue to work because eventually we have to have that capacity. So that is something which the government does. Now, the other part of it is, of course, on the models. And on the models, again, you have large companies who have models of their own, and you have newer examples. I think DeepSeek was a moment where something broke through and suddenly you realize that it need not cost as much as they say it would cost, and there's a way in which you can do it cheaper. And I think that work is going on. The PM also met the 12 companies or 12 startups and institutions which have been selected under the India AI mission to prepare India's first foundation models, so to speak. So to that extent, we would also have models. And there, if you look at, India having its own models issue, there again, we are not being very restrictive in our approach. You see, we are, and I think what we need to recognize and what differentiates us from other countries is that we continue to be an open system. So what is available, and I think it's important in the technology world to be an open system because people in India must have the access to whatever is the latest in terms of technology. Some of it we will develop ourselves, some of it in due course we will develop, but why should you restrict access to technology saying it's not Indian and therefore I will not use it? You have to use it, and that's how I think our IT sector has grown. We have to develop it ourselves, so we have to work towards that. So both have to go hand in hand, and that is the approach we are taking even in the AI mission. Wherever there is available capacity in terms of GPUs, wherever there are models which are available, we use them. We have not restricted use of those models, but we will work on developing our own infrastructure as well. So that is as far as reducing dependence is concerned, and that is as far as strategic autonomy for the country itself is concerned. Now, democratization of AI has one further dimension. It's one thing to have the models, it's another thing to have the GPUs, it's another thing to have the power. But ultimately, the revenue in all of this is going to be derived from the actual applications you make and the applications, the way that they get deployed. That's where the money is going to be made. And I think that's where, and this is something with many members of Nasscom, I've had this conversation, that this is the aspect that, we'd expect Indian companies also to focus on. This opportunity to focus on making applications which can be widely used, and which is why in many ways we've also likened it, as far as the Indian IT industry is concerned, to a Y2K moment all over again, because it's a possibility that you can work towards and get done. And it's no exaggeration to say that I think it's a very legitimate aim for India to aspire to be the use case capital of the world, the application capital of the world. And that's really in the hands of your members. If we are able to do it, and if many of the startups, very, very active startups, are able to do it, that can make a significant difference. And that is what will make AI available to a wide cross section of users. And I think that's very much in tune. And this is exactly the message that even the Prime Minister conveys, that we have to make sure that AI is available as a technology for use by everybody. We did it in the case of DPI. We need to do it in the case of AI as well.
That's very fair. And I think from an industry point of view, that's also a very mature kind of a position that the government has taken and is really working through it. And when you think about it, I think India has taken some very hard choices. I think there is no real example of anywhere else in the world where making access to compute available in a way that it can be accessed broadly and widely and in an affordable manner as a policy decision which is taken by a country. And similarly, I think if you look at another aspect, to say that we are going to look at it from a lens of use cases and actual impact, rather than benchmark our success from a technology lens in terms of a model or in terms of any other criteria. And finally, also taking approach where we build on our existing infrastructure layer of the larger digital set, where we look at the work which is happening on data sets, and so work which is not necessarily easy, but it's hard. So that's why I make the use of the word hard choices. So when you think about those hard choices and the fact that we are now a little ahead in the journey from where we started, maybe these are few steps. But in some of these things, if you now reflect back and you also look in the future, what are in some of these choices, these hard choices, what are some of the things which you think are shaping up as you would have expected them, or where you think that we are doing reasonably well, or where you think that there is scope for us to probably be doing much more and better? Any reflections on this particular aspect?
I think if you look at the reflections, look at it in terms of numbers. Somebody once told us, oh, what is this? In the US, they are announcing $500 billion worth of investment, and you guys are talking about 10,000 crores in the India AI mission. I said, it's wrong to compare apples with oranges. I mean, the $500 billion which was being committed as AI investment or anywhere else is private sector investment into a technology. And that was, at that stage also, I don't think ever intended to be only in the US. We've had discussions with US policymakers. We've had discussions with many others. They are looking for places across the world where these investments can be made, because you need to look at power infrastructure as to where it's available. You need to look at a range of other things. And so if there's an announcement of $500 billion worth of investment by various big tech companies in the US, it includes some investments in India, which you have seen fructify in the past few months. Google made their announcement, followed quickly by Microsoft and followed quickly by AWS. So all of them have come up with their numbers, and they add to a handy about $70 billion or so, or just those three announcements in the past couple of months. So I think that is one part of it, that, people are interested and people will come. But that's not the only part. And then, if that investment is there, that compute is there, that is something which you can then ride on the back of and build further, then that really makes the impact. And which is why I think the democratization aspect and the impact aspect becomes important. Again, it does not mean that we will not attempt to do something of our own in each of these spaces. It does not mean that there won't be Indian providers of data centers. Maybe eventually we've also said that, we are interested in a sovereign cloud capacity for AI, which is something which is intended for government and for certain restricted categories of users. There are companies which are already working on that and who are making those offerings. So we are looking at a range. I mean, you have to look at, we are such a large country and we have such large requirements. to actually rule out a particular kind of use or rule out a particular resource is not advisable. I mean, you have to use everything that comes your way because we have a long way to climb. And although we are the fourth largest economy in the world today, we know that our per capita income is still some way to go. And, this is the whole idea of that Viksit notion that in about 20 odd years, we should actually have a per capita income which takes us into the upper middle income category and almost developed category. And that is a challenge. And the only way you'll do it is by technology. And technology overlaying everything else that happens, technology helping us to improve productivity, technology helping us to improve efficiency. So anything that we can get, we will use. And we will continue to work on building sovereign capacities and strategic autonomy alongside. I think it is not just in India's interest, it's in the global interest. What we have found in recent times, given the kind of what we had as experiences during COVID, what we've had as experiences in geopolitical times, you need both. You're not going to do just one thing. You need your strategic autonomy. You need to plug into the global economy. And by being strategically autonomous and by being a technologically advanced country with capacities in both manufacture and provision of services of various kinds, we are already a leader in IT services, but also, value additions in that space. What you are assuring the world is that there is one more production line. There is one more option that is available for many countries in the world to use. And I think that in today's scenario is extremely important and vital, which is why I say it's not just in India's interest, it's in the world's interest that India does this.
Yeah, it's very interesting in some sense. You typically associate, and I'm just saying it, typically associate from a theoretical background which we have in public policy, is that you tend to think of government as something which converges on central planning. But then hearing Secretary speak, it's also kind of good to understand that how the field is evolving and how the government is acutely aware of this and how all the options are being equally explored. And in that sense, and that is what probably is the need for us to reach where we ultimately want to, not by closing our options, but by building on our strengths and plugging the gaps where there may be. And I think the progress that we have seen over the last few years on the Semicon mission is a good example of something which would probably have appeared to be maybe fictional in terms of even an attempt, is now so much real progress on the ground. Is that something that you think India, or anything that you feel over the next 2 years we should expect to come out of that particular track?
I think there are 2 or 3 things. I think first is, of course, that we have abandoned this idea of centralized planning and planning for everything. So that is done. I mean, you have a strategy, you work towards a strategy, but you don't plan for specifics. That much I think is clear. The second thing which is clear is that we have taken a model which is an open economy, which means that you have to take in a range of players and accommodate them all. There's room for everybody. We are large enough as a country and an economy to accommodate multiple approaches. I think both of these are clear. The third element which is clear increasingly is that governments are there to facilitate and governments are there to enable. And that's what governments need to focus on and get done. So I think all these 3 are clear, and I think the manner in which India is trying to get this done is also fairly clear. That's the direction in which we are trying to push this. So that's one part of the story. The other part of the story is, you alluded to, where we are in terms of the progress on the semiconductor mission, and clearly the semiconductor mission has gone well. I've had multiple occasions to sort of dabble with this at different points in my career, and I think for the first time you're actually seeing the grounding of the investments. And I think last year we've had 4 factories nearly completed and built, and their pilot production start. And this year, full-fledged inaugurations of many of these factories is something that you will see. And I think it's a significant forward movement. And the conviction, what is most interesting is that people now suddenly are believing in India's semiconductor story so much that those who have made these investments are actually receiving orders. The fabs and the ATMPs are getting filled up. And there are one or two people who are now telling us that, we have to export everything because, we've got orders of so much. And so we want to export everything that we make here, which is fine, because I think the best test of industrial policy is whether you're competitive and whether you can export. Because even in the electronic component manufacturing scheme, that is our goal, that we should be competitive and we should export. Because if you're not competitive, then you are subsidizing something which is suboptimal. And so we are very happy to see the export actually taking place. So whether it is the PLI for mobile phones, whether it is ECMS, or whether it is ISM, if there are exports out of these facilities, I think it's a significant achievement. And it is also a reflection what the policy was not fundamentally flawed. It was the right policy that you have actually encouraged an industry which is actually competitive, and that's how you judge the winners. So to that extent, I think that is the significant way forward. Within ISM, of course, I think our task is not yet done. The Prime Minister had also mentioned this in the Semicon event in September, saying that there will be an ISM 2.0, which is getting its final sort of shape and structure. We have gaps to fill there. There is more which needs to come in, at least both in terms of fabs and in terms of certain advanced facilities. There's more which needs to come in terms of the entire value chain, including, equipment manufacture, materials, gases, and so on. So that ecosystem needs to sort of come together in India. That is one. And of course, the fact that, we have 20% of the design workforce of the world in the semiconductor space, many of them in GCCs, which Nasscom also represents, eventually should convert itself into Indian IPs and should convert itself into actually designs which come out of India in this space. And those designs of chips becoming products which India is able to produce. I think that is the level of ambition, and that's the direction we are taking in that space. That is, and the minister is also on record having said this, that these are the kind of things that we want to see come out of India as we speak. And that's part of this entire strategic autonomy piece. And even if, because these are global value chains, you may not have end-to-end presence in everything, but we are, again, as I said earlier, this is not just in India's interest, but in the world's interest, because if we are a dominant or if we are a important player in this space of electronics at each level of this game, even if you don't make everything, and even if you are large enough to make an impact on the rest of the economy, you've proved and you've established that you are a trusted supply chain partner, and you will insulate the world against some of, ultimately, how do you diversify risk? You diversify risk by having alternatives. So we will become one of those alternatives. We will become one of those people. And I think India's record as a country which can be trusted to play fair, and as a country which can be trusted as a liberal democracy, as a democratic country in the long term, is such that we can sort of earn trust. And I think that's probably really the illustrative thing as far as, these announcements of large investments from big tech companies, and also the orders that our semiconductor companies are receiving. I think it's a reflection of that trust.
Yeah, I think on that, I would personally say that the world is just hoping and wishing for us to succeed, because everything else we have got right in terms of our, if you were to profile India. And I personally have seen it as part of Nasscom during pandemic, where we as IT services played a crucial role in keeping the lights on for the world, and secretary started by Y2K. So I think there are a lot of those things that are already going for India. And even to your comment about GCC, I think it's kind of probably hoping to connect the dots and come a full circle, because we had the design firms, we have the GCCs, now we have the rest of the ecosystem, then even IP would probably happen in India. I just have two questions now, and then I'm giving a hint to the audience. If they have some interesting question, keep your question ready. So my one question is that we discussed the fact that there are a lot of pilots and there are a lot of interesting stuff which is happening in India on AI. And you talked about the US 500 billion kind of a project, which is called Stargate. So, but if you take the literal meaning of the word Stargate to in terms of saying that what is that Stargate movement for India in AI, so are there things, and we discussed, for example, one big discussion was around voice being something which can scale up significantly. Another thing which came in the discussion was how that on our existing DPI, we can build something which can really be scaled up. But so my question to you, sir, is that are you already seeing something which gives you this sense that these are some of the scale up ideas, because ultimately we're talking about Impact Summit, or there are something that government is trying to focus on to say that these are few of the things that we would like to see scale up first as compared to others?
I think the most important thing, and I think where India is a little different from the rest of the world, is the areas in which AI is being used. I think there are studies from Stanford and elsewhere which say that globally, a lot of the AI use is in 70% of it is actually for entertainment purposes, people sitting and making cat videos. But India is the country where that number is just about 40%. And the possibilities of actually using it in productive segments of the economy, whether we are talking about manufacturing, agriculture, healthcare, education, and so on, is significantly larger in India, and even governance. If you're able to use it for more effective governance, then it will make a significant difference. So I think in India, the possibilities of using these in these spaces are much greater. And you will see over time that that's why I keep emphasizing the word use case capital of the world. I think we have the ability and the capacity to deliver on that. We have the ability and the capacity to actually repeat our success in the IT services space, repeat our success in the DPI space in the way that AI itself gets used and impacts the life of people. I think that is going to be the crucial moment. When we see that crucial mass of number of ideas which come up and which get sort of picked up and run with. Some of it, the government can't then mandate saying, you shall do this. I mean, I think the good thing is that it is getting into the productive sectors, that we are looking at those sectors. But then to say that this is the winner I pick and this is what will go forward may not be the ideal approach. It depends on absorption, it depends on what gets picked up, and it also depends on the strength of each idea. Which is why, again, we are not saying one model and, there will be one model which we back. We picked 12, 3 or 4 of them are large language models. Number of them are foundational models and small language models or models which address specific niche areas, vision models and so on. So the idea here is that any of these could be a winner. All of them could be winners. Some of them could be winners. So we'll have to see how the winners get picked out of this and who's able to sort of move forward and run forward with the idea. I don't think, the time when government picked winners and said, this is the winner that I want to see, are behind us. We'll have to, this is a way where we facilitate a race, where we sort of put people into a race, encourage all of them and see which one really picks up and then take that forward and move with it. And I think that's the direction in which we really need to head. I would honestly believe that the opportunities are immense, and this race, at least the AI race or the AI game, is far from over, and there's still some way to go. And those countries and those economies which are able to adapt it best and adopt it in their respective economies best are the ones who are going to come out doing the best. And I think our other big opportunity is that we don't have all those many people in white-collar jobs. So the chances of, these job losses, after all, unlike in other cases of, technology changes where manual labor was replaced or animal labor was replaced with mechanical effort and so on, which made working easier. This is a manual work easier. This is the first time that cognitive work is being replaced. So you and I are the ones who are at greatest risk of losing our jobs, which is not such a bad thing. And the thing which ultimately matters, and which if we are able to raise the productivity of a much broader section of India's population, then I think we have this chance to really accelerate growth and get where we want to in 20 years or 22 years time by 2047.
That's very well put, sir. I think the winners are out there, and I think industry has a big role in shaping those winners in some sense. Government has provided the field, and on a lighter note, it also leveled the field. If it is not only the people who are in a certain segment who are always threatened by job disruptions. And coming to my last question, therefore, when we simply look at the AI stack as physical infrastructure, as compute, as models and applications and deployments, and then at least from my IT services lens, from my own knowledge of our own industry and what I hear, we seem to be very sure that on the deployment side, we are in the winner race or in the winner lane. On the application side, I think we have a strong position. I don't know whether we're a winner yet or not. And then I think we talked about certain stuff in terms of investments flowing into the infrastructure layer and all of that. So when you look at this entire AI stack, and I was at one of these meetings where there was a big consulting person, and he used this expression, which I liked very much. I heard it for the first time. It is that where you have right to win. So in these 5 pieces, when you look at it, are there other places where you think we have a right to win, and also where we don't necessarily have to see it like that? And I know, how do you rationalize, because we are all about frugal innovation, so we want to optimize and maximize.
No, I think the right to win really, more than any of this, lies in our talent, I mean, which is the human resources we have are going to be our ultimate right to win. That is where I think the critical difference is going to be made. And that is where, we will see that our talent has carried us, and the human resources of the country have carried us where we want to go. And that is what I think we will end up seeing in the days to come. Everything else is built around that. If you're talking about applications, if you're talking about deployment, if you're talking about any of those things, it's going to happen only out of the human resources that we have built, or the human resources that we have. So I would really bet on that aspect. And I mean, through a significant portion of my career, I've ultimately found that if there is a winning economy, or if there is a winning formula, it ultimately boils down to any company comes and invests only in places where talent is available. So the human resources are the most critical thing, and everything else is incidental. We think, it's incentives which bring them and things. People very often don't even claim the incentives. They know that they can make profits and they can do well and they can succeed where talent is of a high order. And that's what I think we need to bet on. If there's a winner's lane, that's the winner's lane.